And I have 2 sons that are electricians, and they're just like, "What is this?"
Yeah, they're like, it doesn't like make it make
Just
sense,
take a
right?
shower, you'll be fine. Maybe. Or you won't, who knows?
Right.
Hey, and it is Robin here again with Expat Diaries podcast. And today I'm like super excited and I practiced, so I'm hoping I get it perfectly right. This is Ashley Ihemelu.
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 I like flipped my letters there, Ihemelu. And I met Ashley. We got to speak this week, and I was so excited by her journey and her husband's journey and their experience. And you guys know why I do this, right? I want to get you guys as much information as possible. If you're looking to relocate to Costa Rica, you've already relocated, and you're like, none of this is how I thought it would be. None of this is how people said it would be. Like, I want to get you as much good information as possible from people who've already actually done it. They've already made the journey. They've already made the huge quantum leap to change their lives. And Ashley and her husband have done it. And tell me about your first trip down here. I know it was a while back.
It was in 2018. We started to get the itch to leave the United States. Our kids at the time were in preschool, but they were going to a Spanish immersion preschool,
Wow.
which they just took to the language, especially our older child, our son. And we started to kind of dream what it would look like if we lived somewhere outside of what was so familiar to us. And so in 2018, we took a month in the summer, kind of travel around the country. We flew into Liberia. We went to Playa del Coco. We heard or read, had done research, thought it was kind of more family oriented. It was by the beach, of course. It was in that popular Guanacosta area. And we spent a week and a half there, well, a month total. So we landed in Playa del Coco, spent some time there, got to know it a little bit more. We then drove to La Fortuna, Arenal area, which was really touristy, but incredibly beautiful.
Yeah, love that.
And such good restaurants and activities. The kids were a little bit young at that time to kind of do all like the hanging bridges and the zip lines. But it still was an incredible experience. And then
How old were they then?
at the time, so my daughter was almost 2 and our son was almost 4. So
They're
I
really
guess
toddlers.
like toddlers.
Yeah.
And I look back on that trip and just like I wore one of those backpacks where like my daughter was always in it because she was at that age where she was really clingy. And I'm like, we are literally traveling through Central America, trying to figure
With
out
kids on our back.
with literal kids on our backs.
And you know how brave you are, right? Like, think about that. You like just bust out with little kids out of the US and just go, we're going to go do this fun thing.
I know, but looking at like in the moment, you don't really stop and pause and think about like you're doing something grand.
Yeah.
Now we can kind of settle in because we've continued to do those grand things and make those grand decisions, and kind of see where we've kind of detoured from the norm. And but then we went from La Fortuna Arenal to Grecia. At the time in 2018, I believe National Geographic had said that the Central Valley of Costa Rica was the best climate year round anywhere in the world. And so we were like, oh, hold up, like let's check that area out. We were living at the time in Dallas, Texas, where the summers like were so sweltering hot. My daughter was born in September, so I literally was in an August heat wave, 9 months pregnant. And that makes you really think about your decisions in life. And so
Sure.
the Central Valley, like it was awesome. Grecia is such a cute, small town. It's very close to San Jose. I love all of the like cities in Costa Rica because they have this really endearing city center where they have a playground, they have park benches, they have a beautiful church.
Yep.
And it's kind of like this place where you can gather. And so we really kind of found our groove in Gracia where we felt like we could see our life there. But we also had this kind of moment that we were like, if we were living in a major city, that wasn't kind of our Costa Rican dream, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was like, wait, would we move to Costa Rica and live in a city that doesn't seem kind of congruent with like the
The
palm
goal.
trees and the ocean view, right? The goal, exactly.
Well, and the thing is too, like, and you mentioned the ideal city, like they all look like that, but the one thing that you left out was the soccer field.
Oh,
It's
I
always
mean,
the city center, the church,
yes.
and the soccer field, and the soccer field is always the landmark, right? You're gonna
Yep.
come down here and you're gonna turn left at the soccer field. You're gonna drive past the soccer field, and then you're gonna turn everything. It's always that, and
It is always.
every town, every city has that. It's amazing.
And
Um,
you'll see youth games going on. You'll see
always.
pickup games on Saturdays. You'll see grown men in their 60s playing on a Tuesday night at 9 PM. Like,
It's hysterical. And the other thing too, Grecia, what a lot of people don't know is that that's the used car capital of Costa Rica. Like if you're going to buy a pre-owned vehicle,
true.
that's where you go. Like that's like it has the most like dealerships or car lots, whatever they call them, is in Grecia.
Very true. Very true. But we went back to the States after that month-long visit. I think it was like, I don't know, maybe 5 weeks that we were here total. And we kind of thought, okay, we can cross that off of our list. Like, we enjoyed it. Could we see ourselves down here? Not necessarily. They were
But your
just
goal,
something.
remind me, your goal was to be in a Spanish speaking country,
Absolutely. Yep.
right?
Yep.
I mean, that's whenever you like you had your son in an immersion school that was Spanish, right? And so then the goal was we're looking at this country because we want a Spanish speaking country.
Right. And when we had returned home, we looked at Peru. We looked at Colombia. We looked at Guatemala. Like all of, not necessarily go like spend a ton of time there.
Right.
That Costa Rica was like our main, like, let's see if this could dive with us. But those are kind of top places, if you will. If you're wanting to learn the language, these are places where the Spanish is clean, the pronunciation is more formal. You're not learning a bunch of slang. You're learning kind of in the quote unquote, like, right way to speak Spanish.
Yes. So, okay. So then you went back and you decided Costa Rica wasn't it.
Yeah, we thought, well, that was positive because at least, we can cross something off of our list and we're hopefully getting closer. We even looked at Portugal, but then that was like learning a different language. You'd
Right.
be learning Portuguese.
Correct.
And then, my husband's parents were getting older, and to think if we had to, for any emergency, fly back from Portugal, at the time, this was between 2018 and 2020. At the time, tickets were like $900 a piece. I remember that because I was adding it up for a family of 4, and I was like, that's kind of a big commitment if like my mother-in-law gets sick and we want to be there to help support her. And of course, family is important to us.
And the flight time is like
Oh my
forever.
God, like the time zone and like how would I work? And yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So then, so what then led us to a path where like we reconsider Costa Rica?
That's a really great question. So in between that time period, I had gone back to school. I got my nutrition certification. I kind of reinvigorated this passion that I have for holistic health and wellness. Prior to having kids, I worked at a nutritional wellness center. I worked for a holistic doctor. And then I decided to stay at home with my kids. That was what I knew. My mom stayed at home with us. And so it was really important for me to be there in that capacity for our kids.
Mhm.
And then along the line, you kind of lose yourself. Going back to school was my effort to kind of find myself again through the sleepless nights and the constant giving, which I'm so grateful for that time period in my life. But I wanted to get back to myself a little bit more, and reinvigorating my passion for holistic health kind of spurred this curiosity of like, could I find somewhere in Central or South America where I could learn from an elderly woman that was teaching things like herbalism or, just a simple way of living? I think as we've made things really complicated in health, we've also been going back to really ancestral truths. And so I was like, well, where can I find those?
Mhm.
And I started my search.
You need ancestors. That's what you need. You need the people who were alive
Yes,
and grew up and lived like that.
exactly. And so I ended up stumbling upon this like single blog post about this family that came down to Costa Rica. They did a medicinal herb tour at this woman's house, and they talked about regenerative farming and not overtilling the land. And I was like, this is this is like a message straight from source for me. I ended up reaching out to this elderly woman's daughter who spoke English on Facebook, and she was just so warm and excited about the possibility. She said, I have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. It's Tico style, but it's plenty big, and you can rent it while you kind of immerse yourself in what my mother's doing. She even had a farm to table restaurant where she was using stuff from their land, and it was like reservation only. And I'm so passionate about food and how food is medicine. And it just seemed like a bigger call than trying to work out all of the logistics of it. It just seemed like something bigger than us that
Right.
we were like, okay, what's the worst case? Like, we go down there for 3 months and we have an experience? Like, well, that's not horrible.
No.
Like,
No. So I love this that, and like, did you get any videos? Did you get a walkthrough of the house before you got there? Or you guys were just showing up and going, I just know it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
yeah, yeah. So we got pictures, and I guess you can't tell a lot from pictures. I mean, you can and you can't, right? Like, that's how you're going to pick an Airbnb. That's how you're going to choose to see if you want to go bug your realtor to see a
Right.
house to
Right.
buy, right? But I think she was really crafty in the way that she highlighted, like, we were literally right above the ocean. So the ocean view was like insane, 180 degrees ocean view, so close to the ocean that sometimes, when we'd have bad storms, it almost felt like the ocean was going to swallow us whole, like the house and everything. And of course, it's in the middle of the pandemic. So it's 2020 now. We cannot technically leave. Costa Rica at the time was not allowing, you know, certain people from different states went kind of with like low COVID numbers first. And of course, we were coming from Texas, which, hello, COVID numbers were super high because the population is really high.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we just kept pushing it off. We kept pushing it off. We kept pushing it off. And finally, we were like, okay, if we aren't allowed in by November 1st, we're going to pivot our plan. And they opened the borders October 15th. And we were like, giddy up. Like, we're ready to go. We had slowly been packing up our house. We had been kind of slowly moving things to storage, hoping that this plan would work out. At the time, our son was going to kindergarten on an iPad and just like absolutely hated it. So we were kind of really banking, obviously, like on this happening because we were slowly progressing towards it. But when we got that notification, I mean, we put all of our things in storage that we were keeping, got rid of the rest, and rented our house out.
Wow. So You keep saying we because it's you and your husband and your children. So your husband
Yeah.
was like on board with all of this too, or was like, whatever you want, that's what we'll chase your dream. We've chased my dream for a while. Like what was like
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we definitely had chased his dream. I think he was absolutely on board with it. Like, I feel like I'm more of like the bold personality in the relationship. So whenever we make like a big decision, people are always like, is Ugo like, cool with it? Like, or is he, like, and I'm like, yeah, surprisingly, we do talk about a lot of things. We've always been on the same page. He wasn't born in the United States, so I think it even made him more open to the possibility of, oh my gosh, we live in such a big world. It would be so unfortunate if we just stayed in our little bubble and
Mhm.
didn't teach our kids different things by seeing different places and learning about different cultures. So that was really important to him as well.
Good. And it's funny because like in mine and my husband's dynamic is the same. Like I'm that one that's always exploring what are we gonna do? How are we gonna get it? What do we want? And sometimes I feel like if we weren't married, would he do this? Probably not. Like probably not. Like I'm the risk taker and he's just like, all right, let's jump. And I'm like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a mistake and sometimes it's not. And it's like, doesn't matter. Like the adventure is there, whether it's a mistake or it wasn't. Like, I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
I've got time to redo it. And if I don't, I won't care. There you go.
Right. And I think sometimes you need like that partnership,
Oh,
because
100%.
when we landed, things weren't as perfect as we thought they would be. He was that grounding force that was like, okay, Ashley, like, let's find a normalcy with this huge change. Like, how do we stay grounded? How do we stay calm? And so we really lean heavily on each other's strengths.
I bet. Okay, so now you have arrived at the luxurious Tico home. Tell
Yes, yes.
tell me all the
So,
things.
yeah, the fun things that we discovered first week is that the house was like so big and there were so many beautiful aspects to it. However, it didn't have windows. And that's like not totally uncommon in Costa Rica, but it didn't have screens either.
Okay.
So,
So it had openings. It
yes.
didn't have anything to protect you from the elements.
Yeah, you are one with nature in like the most complete way that I can describe that to you.
Got you.
And, it that was a big thing. It didn't have, hot water. So, in traditional, quote, unquote, "t traditional Tico houses" that, that's how this was sold to us. They have what's called or what is coined the Widowmaker, where it is a mechanism right above the faucet that is heating the water as it's coming out. It's called the Widowmaker because obviously you don't want electronics by water sources, but it's
Sometimes
super
they call
common.
sometimes they call it a suicide shower because
Yes.
like, they'll literally just run a wire into that heats the water as it's coming towards you. It's like and I have 2 sons that are electricians, and they're just like, "What is this?"
Yeah, they're like, it doesn't like make it make
Just take
sense,
a
right?
shower, you'll be fine. Maybe, or you won't, who knows?
Right, right.
If not, just yell on your way down and we'll CPR you back to
Yeah,
life.
seriously. I mean, and at this point, I think my kids were 5 and 3. They they would go out and play. It was rainy season. They were always out. And so they had to take showers every
Yeah.
day. Like I couldn't put them into bed like just caked with mud and they would cry every single night because the water was so cold. And it was just now we laugh so much about it because we would really be all huddled in the shower, like pumping each other up, like, you can do this, like, you're so brave. Like, okay, mommy's gonna go in the water. Um,
That's
and
hysterical.
it really taught our kids and even ourselves a lot of resiliency. Like think of people living in the States, like when they get an opportunity to be so far out of their comfort zone
Yeah.
that it's almost a little painful, you know?
It is. It is. And but the thing is like those are the things but they become experiences for your kids and for you too. Um, and they let you know your borders, right? Like what can we tolerate? We can tolerate more than we thought we could.
For
And
sure.
it's so liberating whenever you do that. And because now you know I'm not going to die if I don't have this, this, and this in my life. It may be inconvenient, but it's not as bad as that time that, we had no windows and we were in the shower with no hot water for 3 months at a time. And, us and the bugs just lived together because we were in harmony. You know what I'm saying? So it's like whatever you do now and there may be a time when you choose an adventure that is as big as that one or worse, but it'll be an adventure because you've already been down that path, right? You've already like
Yep.
going, okay, great, let's stretch ourselves a little bit further. So now you've gotten out of this place, and where did you go next?
Yeah, so
Did you guys do that for
surprisingly,
3 months? Did you stay there for the full 3 months?
we stayed there for the full 4 months because at the
Well,
time, it was the pandemic and they weren't, like, kicking people out right at that 90-day mark. They were saying, "Okay, March 1st is probably when we're gonna end it," so we booked flights back to the States, and, and then I think they pushed it even further. However, like, crazy people, like, we didn't have a vehicle when we first moved to Costa Rica, so people don't realize that, like, cars are so expensive in Costa Rica. My first car was a 1996 Toyota 4Runner, and I sold that car probably, gosh, I mean, 2008, I sold it for probably $4,000. You can buy that car today in Costa Rica for like $8,000. So just to give a little bit of context there. And so I had this thing where I was like, unless we are fully committed to living in the country, I don't want to buy even a $15,000 car. So
which
we would just,
which to be fair is still a hoopty.
yes, yes.
So
Like,
just
to
for
be
everybody
all realness, yes, yes. It's not like, yeah, you're not getting luxury from that. And so we would do a lot of, like, again, my husband was desperately trying to find routine and consistency. So we would walk the neighborhood that we were living in. And then we met so many different people living next to a restaurant. We were totally embraced by her family. Her sister, her mom, her brother, her cousins, like, just we found out that there was like two major families that lived in our neighborhood, which is Playa Hermosa. There's
Mhm,
like three Playa Hermosas in Costa Rica. This
mhm.
one is just north of Uvita. And she was one of the primary families in Playa Hermosa, Uvita. And they just so warmly embraced us. And so we started meeting people. We met a realtor who is still to this day one of our really good friends. And he started taking us around looking for properties. Cause I think at this point, my husband was like, this is actually kind of an untouched, like, insane area that we could probably be really successful in real estate. And we ended up buying a property. I have pictures of this property the same month that we moved to Costa Rica, which again is probably so insane for most people. Now that I look back on it, I think it's quite insane myself. But we ended up buying a hectare, which is 2.5 acres in that same neighborhood where we did on a whim because I wanted to meet an elderly woman to teach me about medicinal herbs.
I love it. And so, but during that time that when, like, because I know we didn't talk about this whenever we spoke at first. During that 4 months when you were in her home with her family, in that neighborhood right there, what was class like? Like she's teaching you, like, are you just hanging out with her, or is there a time when you have structured time with her and she's walking you through all of that? Did you have to have a translator? Was there English, any, you know what I'm saying? All of those things. What was that like?
That's a really interesting question because it's actually not what I thought that it would be. I thought that it was like would be structured time. I thought that it would be like more like me writing things down and, identifying plans. It was actually not like that at all because she ended up being quite tight with her information. One, probably because she didn't know me. She didn't know what I was gonna do. Like, I wasn't trying to come in and, reinvent her wheel or monetize what she had been
Right.
doing. And so I absolutely respect that cautiousness, because I know stories where it's happened like over and over again. So I kind of was like more like the fly on the wall that was like, she would have a medicinal tour that people would pay to go. And they're like, Ashley, do you want to go? And I'm like, yes. So, like, I just more
I had to
so.
be like an observer.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, and to be fair, like I went from like being pretty rigid, like with my diet, my kids' diet. Like I'm a nutritionist at this point. I had worked for a holistic doctor. Like we were no seed oils. We were all organic produce, no gluten, like all of the things. And then we're like completely embraced by this family who would like make this entire spread and be like, come on over for dinner. And I would be like, yes, we will see you there.
Yeah.
Because it was more important to me to kind of have that immersive experience where we were building a community and we were learning from like full immersion, being with them, just overhearing the language, all of that.
So,
And
so then dietarily, you took all your walls down and said, we're just going to do this. We're going to have this experience right now, even though these are the things that we have set our family up around for the sake of learning and becoming part of this community. We're going to put all of this down and then we'll pick this back up later.
absolutely. And I still controlled like what was done in our home, right? It's not like the wheel fell off completely. However, it got me out of a really rigid place where I felt like health was built just like on an all or nothing thing. And I think there was a little bit of what we call in the health community like orthorexia, where you're trying to do everything so perfect. It's a little bit like you're riding heavy on your sympathetic nervous system. You're dysregulated in a sense. Like you do have to have a commitment to health in our world today. I strongly believe that. However, where is the balance? Like, where is the community and is more important than having that perfect meal for dinner? Where is that bandwidth where, we really look at health as having that resiliency to be able to kind of have a little give
Yeah,
in regards to,
that flexibility, because
yes,
then otherwise every meal, every outing, everything is an ordeal. And if you don't have any flexibility whatsoever, now you're having to make decisions about another part of your life that's important, which is community or friendship or family, based on your rigidity right here and your lack of flexibility.
exactly. And I have people reach out to me all the time on social media now, and they're like, Ashley, I want to visit Costa Rica or I'd love to live there, but talk to me about the organic produce. Talk to me about, yeah. And I'm like, I can give you those details, right? I've lived it for the past 4 years, but you're also missing the point, right? You're not opening yourself up to the experience that could be had when you kind of allow yourself to free fall in a way.
Yeah. I love it. So now you're not in that part of Costa Rica anymore. So did you sell your house or do you still have it?
We still have it. So in 2021, we built a house on land that we bought, which
Right.
was an experience of itself. I mean, like imagine hiring a builder that only speaks Spanish. It's kind of the wild, wild west a little bit here. Like I had previously lived in Puerto Rico for 2 years in my 20s. And
Mhm.
I really learned that, like, you go to a bank on a Tuesday needing to deposit a check because something's going to hit your account and the bank's closed and it's not a holiday. There's no given reason, right?
Right,
So I had kind of that trial run of being out of control in a place that you want that rigidity and it does not exist.
right.
And
And even in the
yeah,
States, we make fun of bankers' hours in the States, right? Because they work less hours than anybody, right? And then
right.
then take that and, like, wipe it down to 10% because that's your level of expectation with banking in Costa Rica. It should be at 10%. Your expectations of it should be like 10% of what you expect at home, and then you're still gonna be pissed off.
Yeah, and you're still gonna go on an hour that it's open like we did last night, and it took, like, an hour and a half, like, that's just kind of, I don't wanna say that's, like, to be expected. It's definitely could happen,
Yeah,
and it takes a lot of surrender, I think. In the first year that we lived here, I felt like I was having, like, nervous breakdown, like, every month, and it was like I didn't have anywhere to hide from myself, to be honest. Like, I didn't have a Target to go shop for things I didn't need. I wasn't going grocery shopping at 4 different grocery stores. It really was an opportunity where it was like, "Oh my gosh, here I am," and like it or not, like, I need to get really good with myself because that is gonna be the foundation to, like, every experience that we're gonna have. And then you kind of surrender to it all, and you have this beautiful breaking, in a sense,
mhm.
of what you are so conditioned to believe and feel comfort in, and just the quote unquote norm of life in the States where you're choosing between 10 different options for ketchup. Um, and in that breaking, you actually have freedom because now you're more resilient. You can kind of pivot when things get hard. You're at the bank and it's an hour and a half and you find something fun to do with your son. Like, it just allows you to be so much more flexible with this human
Mm.
experience that I think it's truly invaluable.
I think
Um,
one of my favorite stories, this one lady that I was interviewing, and she was talking about she had phone service, and, it was her and her I think her and her teenage daughter that lived they were up in Guanacaste somewhere, and she, like, gets up one day and her phone is shut off, and she's like, "What the crap?" Or maybe it was her water. She's like, what the hell?" Like, so she goes to figure out, like, how do I go online? Where do I go, like, to pay
yeah,
this?
what do I do?